Well, good morning, everyone, and Des, you honour me. Thank you so much for such generous, kind words. I'm really privileged to have been asked to address you this morning. It's a great honour. And the other great thing about it is I was brought back to my hometown. And the thing about what I find interesting about the place you were born, it's like no matter how many years you are away from it, it kind of stays in your DNA. And I just feel like I've never left, so it's wonderful to be here. Okay, so, where are we? Oh, we've got to go back. Ooh. Ooh. Oh, that's where is it going? I should have been at the beginning, sorry guys. Quick rewind. Why don't I go to the beginning? Oh, I thought it was at the beginning, sorry. I'm of the old school. I still use a pen and pencil, and I just about know how to send emails. Are we there? Okay, good. Okay, so when I received the information about this conference and the fact that it was inspired by an exhibition entitled Design For, is that the right one? Yep, okay. No, it's not happening. Design For. Okay. All right. So, yes, when the exhibition that inspired this conference was called Design For, the 90%, the other 90%. And what impressed me was that those responsible for organising this conference changed the title to Design With. Now, if I hit the right button, yeah. And it's a very subtle but very important change of emphasis, which implies community, collaboration, participation, and ownership, the thing that Des was talking about. Throughout my career, I've been designing for the business world. And that is the way most professional designers operate. We're expected to be the experts in our field, and we are paid to deliver solutions to clients and that solve their problems and provide for their needs. 40 years ago, I decided to dedicate 10% of my working time to do charitable work. And I applied the same principle, design for the organizations I was helping at the time. I found it very difficult to give up control and to give up the role of being the expert and telling my clients what to do. Here's a quote. Here's a quote. Here's a quote. Okay, here's a quote by Lao Tzu. So he says, "A leader's best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim is fulfilled, they will say, 'We did it ourselves.'" And that's exactly the thing that Des mentioned. And I'm hoping that we'll see some case studies over the next few days which demonstrate this kind of generosity. Now, can I hit the right button? No, it doesn't seem to do it. What are we supposed to do? Control? Is that one? No? No, it's gone back. No, it should go. No. Oh, go back. Okay. Oh, it is. Oh, I see. All right. Oh, okay. Oh, go back again. What happens when you go back? Okay, so we came from there and then we go to, so I hit that one. That's the one. Sure, all right, sorry about that, folks. Okay, so the second part of the title, Changing the World by Design, suggests that the world needs changing, and I think we can all agree on that. We're in a real mess. People killing each other all over the place, women and children being raped and put into slavery, the financial system breaking down, corruption in high places, inept government, CO2 emissions at their highest, inequality, racism, poverty, hunger, obesity, the list is endless. But there's good news. And the good news is that change is taking place. And there is the optimistic belief that a time will come when the tipping point is reached and we will achieve a sustainable lifestyle and a resilience to the consequences of our past actions. Charles Eisenstein, one of the great minds of our time, describes this as a sphere which begins to hollow out until the surface collapses. Examples of this in recent times are apartheid, communism, and the Berlin Wall. Both systems were so powerful, it was difficult to see how and when they might fall. It took years of effort on the part of many people working for change, and suddenly, poof, they were gone. And what is significant is that the final act was down to a change in government policy. And research in Sweden has shown that change does not only happens, finally, when new government policy is introduced. And so that is one, I think, of the areas where we need to concentrate on persuading and informing government of the need to change. Efforts are being made in the financial sector to reform our monetary system, and the international monetary movement has been established. This is a consortium of organizations and people across the world campaigning to change the way money is created. Finally, some top financial people are admitting that the system is flawed. This is Mervyn, ex-governor of the Bank of England. Recently, I attended a presentation by Ben Dyson, the founder of Positive Money. Since 2010, he has devoted himself to figuring out what's wrong with the financial system and has some interesting solutions. Whoops. No? Cool. Okay. In 2006, another extraordinary person devoted himself to finding answers to global warming and the belief that the oil supply was going to run out. He set about uniting the people in his town, Totnes, in Devon, in England, to prepare for the worst, and created the concept of transition towns. Transition Town Totnes is a dynamic community-led and run charity that exists to strengthen the local economy, reduce the cost of living, and build resilience for a future with less cheap energy and a changing climate. They publish information and guides on the subject, and they even have their own currency, the Totnes pound, which you can use to buy stuff in the town. Within 6 months, there were 12 transition initiatives in the UK, and today there are 1,430 towns in 50 countries, all working towards making our cities sustainable and resilient. Even in shipping, there's a drive towards contributing to a sustainable future. Now, I presume you're all aware of the concept of cradle to cradle. Just so I know who knows about it. Okay, you all know about it, but I think it's worth reminding ourselves. So created some 10 years ago by William McDonough and Michael Braungart, their influence has spread throughout the design industry. There's even a design group in Denmark now calling themselves Cradle People, following the principle of upcycling. And as you know, this is about putting biodegradable material back in the ground to create food for the soil. Non-biodegradable material gets dismantled into its component parts, and the raw material used to make other products. And products that can achieve this can apply for the cradle-to-cradle certification. And you probably all know this chair by Steelcase, where everything can be dismantled and reused. And finally, in Denmark, we have Index Design, designed to improve life. It was originally conceived in 2002 by designer John Adam Linneballer and Danish Permanent Secretary Jørgen Rosted as a world event for design. And the word index was an abbreviation of the International Design Exhibition. When the organization was founded, the goal was to brand Denmark by the use of a large-scale traditional design award, hoping to attract attention, tourists, and investments to Denmark. But that soon changed, and it evolved to more reflect the humane and democratic tradition of Danish design. In Denmark, we are seeing signs that business is beginning to wake up to the fact that there's money to be made by going green. By 2016, it is believed there will be a legally binding agreement between 160 countries to reduce CO2 emission. My wife, Karen Blinko, I'm pleased to say, is currently chairing a board set up to create a centre to facilitate the move towards a sustainable and resilient Denmark by 2025. Very ambitious. Funds for this have been provided by the Velux Foundation, a philanthropic organisation that provides funding for social causes. And I guess that really brings me to the end of what I hope has been a bit of heartwarming news from the cold north. Now, you may be asking yourselves, well, okay, after what Des said, what have you done with the other 90? But I haven't. I've done things 4, I think, up to now. And the work I'm going to show you is not so much about, I think, the 90% that's the subject of this conference, because it's been about just helping people who would not otherwise use design, to help them in their communication, but all of them were doing some good in society, whatever that was, whether it was for culture or whether it was for some real needs. So let me start with the Museum of Modern Art in Oxford, a very small museum, converted a pub, a brewery actually, converted brewery building, and they managed to get some funding and had an architect that renovated the place. And they needed help, they needed a sign system, and they needed branding. And I offered my services over a period of 2 years to help them achieve what they wanted. And what they did really, I think, was quite important, because they brought art exhibitions into Oxford that would not otherwise have been there. So I did a sign system and the usual banners and bags, shopping bags and other things you could buy. And a series of posters which announced the exhibitions that were taking place. This one was about artists who lost their lives in the First World War. This was an exhibition of the Makonde tribe of East Africa. You know how they carve figures on top of each other out of a piece of wood. This was for an Islamic sculptor. And this exhibition was about avant-garde Czech design and architecture of the 20s and 30s. Aha, again. Okay, no. Okay. Click on that. Click on that. No. No, I don't. Click on that. And then there, okay. When I was in New York doing on an assignment for Reuters, I noticed the emergence of this new kind of graffiti. And this was in 72, in the autumn of 72. And it had just started in the summer, and it was quite an extraordinary phenomena, I thought. It was, of course, vandalism, and it was and it terrified the community of New York. And as we know, the police were out there capturing the kids and imprisoning them and doing all sorts of things to stop this. But it was a movement that was so powerful, and I realized that this was a phenomena that was going to spread, and I decided to document it. And I wanted to create a fund to send some of the kids to art school. And so we found a publisher, and I invited the publisher to participate in this idea. And he said, look, I'm in this for money, forget it. And so, and the book never made any money. But what I heard recently, which has really thrilled me, is that there's been a huge acceptance of street art, especially in the UK. And it's become, and we know that people like Banksy, have become famous. And recently, someone has been doing a documentary about street art. And he called me up and said he'd like to interview me. He said, because I don't know if you realize it, but that book, from all my conversations with street artists, that book inspired them and paved the way for the acceptance of street art in our society. And so that was a thrilling thing for me. This was a contribution to Preston Polytechnic. The students were doing a book on typography, and they asked me if I would contribute a piece. So this was my discovery of an alphabet in Pentagram Studio. We then collaborated with Kent State University to run some workshops for teachers, American teachers. And we invited the British schools to send their best students. And I think the American teachers paid, but that just covered the cost of the accommodation. The British students were there for free. And we ran a series of workshops over a period of 3 or 4 years, 4 years, I think it was. And this says the second annual Kent and Pentagram graphic design workshop, Cambridge, England, 1982. So I was experimenting with typography at that time, knowing it was aimed at designers and challenging them in readability. This was an interesting, realizing that the letters we use in our language are totally meaningless symbols on their own. Put them together and they make poetry. And the idea of taking them apart and looking at them as individual characters with no meaning in themselves. So this again says Kent and Pentagram Graphic Design Workshop. And this one, of course, uses the letters of design to spell out some other words which you can't see because it's faded. This was an offer, a gift to Graphis, a cover for their, and Graphis magazine on various forms of communication. And so I used the various forms to spell the word Graphis, Morse code, semaphore, speech, and so on. The Architecture Association in London was having a series of exhibitions on the work of Frank Lloyd Wright, and this was my contribution to a poster to announce the exhibitions. And now this isn't anyone who needs help, really, but I thought this would amuse you, because this was my birthday gift to the Queen on the occasion of her 60th birthday. And so I designed this brand for an event that took place in London where they got school children from all over the world to march down the Mall. There were thousands of kids all carrying a yellow daffodil, and they got to the palace gates and they sang happy birthday. And so there were, little badges the kids could wear and bags for their lunch packs and so on and so forth. And a mug, of course. And what was funny was that those who took part in this organised the event were presented to the Queen, and so I was standing there, all dressed up in my suit and tie and new haircut, and the Queen came up and said, introduced to her, and she said, "Oh, I do like what you've done," and that was lovely, yes, ma'am. And then Andrew came bouncing up and he said, "Oh, hello, what do you do?" And I was tempted to say, well, I redesigned the face of your mum, but I resisted that. And the commentator, it was televised, and afterwards someone had recorded it and showed me the television program. And the commentator had said, and now the Queen's meeting Mervyn Kurlansky, the designer of the face on the mug. So anyway. And I thought that was quite sweet. A kid kept his lunch in his tuba. This was a contribution to an organisation trying to raise money to build a sculpture in the plaza in front of the Twin Towers. And they never raised enough money to do it, and just as well it would have been a waste. So. This was for Korea, Seoul, where they built a new centre to exhibit design and promote design, and it's quite an extraordinary place called Plaza, something Plaza, and they asked me to contribute a poster, and I was intrigued by the quote by now I'll forget, I'll have a senior moment. Who said you can please all the people all the time?
Abraham Lincoln.
Who was it? Abraham Lincoln. Thank you very much. Abraham Lincoln. So I was inspired by that. And so I used it for design. Design can please some of the people, some of the time, all of the people, some of the time, some of the people, all of the time, but it can never please all of the people, all of the time. I tell my clients that. This was for the Mexican friends who were running an exhibition about the work of Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera, and it was a homage to their life. Stuck again. Back. Back one more. Was it one more? Oh, okay, yeah. Lovely, thanks. Okay, and this was my contribution to celebrate Nelson Mandela's 95th birthday, and it says, "Happy birthday to the man who brought peace to South Africa." A contribution to the Latin American Arts Association, and this was for the what was it? There was the International Association of Family Therapy. And then for the World Health Organization, I contributed. They were trying to encourage people to the idea that we could conquer AIDS, and this was my logo, which was that we could diminish AIDS. A charity that was, how are we doing for time, by the way? Who's timing me? Are we all right? This 5 minutes? Okay. Okay, so I'll go faster. This one was for a charity helping people with Down syndrome to become self-reliant. I'll pass on that. I'm working with Wari, in Mali, with an organization that is forming an educational platform to help the people of Mali to become self-sustaining and to become sustainable. And so I've designed their brand, and I should be going down in the future to help train the people. And there's an opportunity for me to finally design with the people, and so that they end up doing it themselves. I chaired the Ikagrada design seminars for 3 years, and did a series of posters, and chose the subject and picked the speakers. This one was on design and the global brain. And then finally, we celebrated 25 years of these seminars, and that was a celebration of the people who spoke over that period. That was the book I did afterwards to celebrate that, and the chronological order in which they spoke, and so on. And a poster which finally took a piece of the 107 designers who spoke, and with their names next to it. And this is for the Petersburgs in Russia, celebrating their 250th anniversary. Napoli was a contribution to draw attention to the fact that there was vandalism and corruption, and the whole city had decayed from a wonderful cultural place. And that was my contribution to the Polish government, their pavilion in Spain, in Seville, and they wanted an idea for a flag, an earth flag, based on solidarity. And I thought, well, we'll never get to an earth flag unless we learn to love each other. And so that was my idea. And then finally, when Iran, when the authorities were being very brutal against the demonstration that took place a few years ago, a friend asked designers to make a contribution to a statement about that. And so that was my statement, and then finally it was going to go on the internet, and finally the authorities blocked the whole program. So, but I guess I'll probably never be able to step foot in Iran again. I'll pass on this one, although, well, I'll go very quickly. A friend of mine, 20 years ago, had this idea to start. He had enough money, he made a lot of money out of business, and he wanted to promote British sculpture. And he had the grounds and he had the money. And so he set about commissioning new work, as well as from existing well-known artists to unknowns. And he commissioned 20 pieces a year, paid for it. From the sale of those 20 pieces, they didn't all sell, but he then put it back in and contributed towards commissioning more work. And I guess over 20 years, he's probably commissioned some 400 new pieces. And I decided that that was a worthwhile cause, and I would help him promote that. And I did that for 20 years. I gave about 10% of my time, which is quite a lot. But finally I was rewarded. And when it came to the 20th anniversary, he paid me to do this book. So I just thought I'd just, if I can get it to go forward again. Yes, okay, so it was a book about all the pieces that he commissioned, and I'll just show you a few. Okay, so 90% of my time was given to 10% of the population, and 10% of my time to the other 90. I thought, but even then, that was just a drop in the ocean. And I had the opportunity when I was approached by SAPI, paper company, you know, so it's a South African paper company, who moved into Europe, and I was approached by them. How do they form a relationship with the European designers, graphic designers? And usually paper companies do very smart calendars and publications and try and persuade designers that they know all about design and try and create loyalty for their product. And I said, why don't we research and find out what designers really want? And out of the research came this need that designers express to put something back into society, to do work for social good. And so out of that idea, we launched a program called Ideas That Matter. And SAPI gave an award. We gave 10 awards in Europe, 10 awards a year, to design campaigns. They would submit their campaigns, and we judged the best ones. We gave 10 awards worth 50,000 euros each to run a campaign for a charity and to do social good. And I guess over the, I'll just show you a few things. So I called it, instead of call for entries, I called it call for action. And so I did the public, and this, I had fun with this rebus because it's an ancient idea to make a sentence out of pictures and letters. And it's a very Victorian British idea. And it says ideas that, you hat minus the, plus the T, that, mat, and fur minus the F, ideas that matter. And so the call for action was that this was an ideal campaign. You got to realize your ideas, you got to do social good, and blah, blah, blah. And so you just send in your campaigns and ask for an award, and if it's good enough, you get it. And then we sent them a door hanger which said, "Do not disturb, I'm thinking of ideas that matter. But come in with fresh ideas, if you have fresh ideas and fresh coffee." And so we did that for 7 and 8 and 9. 10 was a challenge. It was the 10th anniversary. So I had to turn it on its side in order to hang. Okay, so we did some books celebrating the work that had won awards. And this was an incredible program by a man called Alan Lekwernek, who actually also does a lot of good work in his city with students doing work for social good. And this was a campaign against smoking and pregnancy. So, after 15 years and an investment of more than $12 million, SAPI's enabled designers to help more than 500 NGOs worldwide. And of course, we know we need to do more. So, there are 1 million, estimated, 1 million designers in the world. And we reckon everyone has about 1,500 hours, working hours a year. So if every designer gave 10%, that's 150 hours per designer. That's 150 million hours. That's like 18,750 days or 1,250 years. I mean, think of what we could do. It's just extraordinary. And it's this whole idea, part of me says, no, designers should be paid, I mean, the reason we do work for Cumulus is because that's where we earn our living, and we have to put bread on the table, and that's quite natural. And so we don't do work with or for the other 90% because it doesn't pay, and we're trying to make a living. And so it comes to this idea, and so they should be paid, and we have to find ways that they could be paid. But until that happens, it's about gifting and about giving, and I believe in that. I believe that that's all there is, giving. So we need to create programs with clients, with people who have money that support design for social good. We could use social media to make use of group funding. It's an extraordinary opportunity, and we need to come up with new ideas. I'm going to apply for funding to the organization that's funding this center to make Denmark sustainable, to bring designers, top designers in Denmark together to look at, well, what role will design play in making Denmark sustainable, and make sure that there is funding for it and it is done properly. So that's my hope for the future. Thank you.